Hey, welcome to the afternoon sessions of Men's Health Connected on May the 8th. It's Mates Day, and we're talking all day today about social connection and men's health. We've been hearing from some great men's health projects from around Australia today, talking on different themes. This afternoon, we're having a sort of a boozy late lunch because we're going to focus a little bit on social connection and alcohol, but in a really positive way by bringing together representatives of two projects that actually use the pub as a way of connecting with men. So coming up later, we've got Daniel Chin of the Barstool Brothers, but we're going to kick off today with Shay Layton of the Tough. Have I got it the wrong way around? Sorry guys, did we agree that way around? I can't remember which way we said. Yeah. Shay first. Sorry, it was Shay first. Yeah. Liam, edit that out and make it look like it didn't make any mistakes. 3, 2, 1, chop. So we're going to come to Daniel Chin of the Barstool Brothers a little bit later, but first we're going to hear from Shay Layton of the Tough Guy book club, who has got many interesting things to share, not just about how men connect in pubs, but how men have been connecting over the generations. And his presentation today is your granddad was involved. Shay, over to you.
Thanks, Glenn. Firstly, g'day everyone. Also, I am sick as a dog, so if I'm a bit flaky, that's what's going on. I've just eaten some cold and flu medication and a coffee, so we'll see how we can just power through. Firstly, so my name is Shay Layton and I run Tough Guy Book Club. Today was all about third spaces. I saw the agenda for today. So I'm pretty sure that you've covered the basics throughout the day, so I'm not going to harp on about that too much. So today I'm going to talk about 3 things: drinking, joining, and your granddad. I didn't know him, but I'm going to talk about him. I should probably, talk about how reading is good for you and makes you healthier and happier, because it's kind of my jam. But smarter people than me have written at great length about it. So if you want to know about that, I'd suggest Googling it. Or I could have talked about beers and I could talk at great length about pubs, but I wanted the Barstool. I wanted Daniel to have something to talk about. And let's be honest, I've been talking about pubs and reading and men in pubs for a decade now. So half of you have heard it. I know most of the names in this room. So, so let's start. Tough Guy Book Club is a network of 80 book clubs in pubs around Australia. If I'm in public, I'm going to say we're about reading books, hitting the pub with the guys, getting in rowdy conversations. Our club is about putting decent conversations back in the pub, because for too long, the pokies, the cover band, and the TV, sport on the TV have left the Australian men with boring conversations. And we have a goal of getting guys to read more, talk more, and have more friends. But if you ask me privately, it's about community building, because that's what a lot of our organizations are hopefully about. A long time ago, I wrote a paper called The Small Village Church, which was a theory about a small town that where a church can become a singular community focus in which you build the community around. The basic idea is that everyone's involved in one big organization, and so everyone is involved and everyone has got a touch point with the singular organization. It's not about specifically faith. It's just that we can have central locations, foundations in which we community build from. So essentially, the long and short of it is that if on Sunday, if old Greg doesn't turn up, then someone goes around and checks on him because they didn't see him at the thing on Sunday. So because the idea is that no one is disconnected or isolated from the community. The church in this example is not about faith. It is just about a location of community focus. Sorry, my day job is a community organizer. So this might be a little more theoretical than you're coming in for, but I'll try and sort of get through it. But what happens if that singular focus model and the nature of that single focus model, the nature of that community center changes? As an example, your grandfather was probably a member of a football club, and if he stopped turning up, people would notice. People would be like, "Where's old Greg gone?" But my local football team has 20,000 members. If I don't turn up, no one gives a shit. No one is going to notice. Actually, probably the sales team are going to notice. They're going to turn up, they're going to call me and say, hey, you're not paying us anymore. That's the only people who are going to notice. And how do we move from this single point of community focus? Is that we focus on trying to build as many points of community interaction with people. Because what we call a dense lattice work of community, the more a person interacts with their community, the happier and generally healthier they are. Sorry, I'm not doing a lot of footnotes today, but if you want references, please email me on shay@toughguybookclub.com and I'll send you my notes. So the more a person interacts with their community, the actual greater the outcome for both health and happiness. A lot of the time we're going to talk about happiness when it comes to TGBC. TGBC is short for Tough Guy Book Club. Get sick of saying, when you name something really long, you get sick of saying the whole thing all the time. But that interaction is what we need to sort of continue. Ways to interact is what we actually need to get people to find more ways, like impress upon the guys that we're dealing with. If you're a primary healthcare or something like that, or prevention healthcare, if you're in this room, the more things we can get people involved in their community creates a sense of purpose and fights isolation. So yes, the modern lone wolf myth has really fucked a lot of men up. We've been sold down the river by a bunch of, self-help gurus and car commercials. But the reason being is that men are social animals. We are social animals. And you can't self-sufficiency your way to happiness. You can't tough your way out of loneliness. So what we need to do is we need to talk about men's social connections. Let's talk about your own. If you're in this room, I think it's just Kim and Ellie. Sorry, this is quite a gendered conversation, but you can flip this one around. Is it you are probably a father, a husband, and a guy with a job. Okay, all those things are responsibilities, and those are great. But when we're talking about those responsibilities, that is a list where you're responsible for others and to others. Where on this list is where you are responsible for your stuff. So let's look at your grandfather in that same position. He was probably a member of a football club, a church, a union, volunteer firefighters, the Buffalo Club, the Masons, the RSL, the Lions Club, the cricket club. And then he was a father, a husband, and a guy with a job. So the ways that he's interconnected with his community have changed over the last 100 years quite dramatically. A lot of people's third space these days is going to be, like work, home, and their third space is going to be a Netflix subscription. How do we get guys to be more included in stuff? So do you think he felt more included or more included in his community or less included? Of course he felt more included. I wouldn't ask that because it's a rhetorical question I'm using to try and move the conversation forward. But because he was so involved in numerous ways, he was more included in his community. There were so many ways he interacted with his community that we are no longer essentially involved in. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of political and economic changes in that circumstances, but frankly, I can't fix those. So, but the difference in the list is that he joined things, he ran things, and there was things that he was able to join. So Glenn sent me some setup questions for this talk, and the second one was, what is the problem you're trying to solve? The problem Tough Guy Book Club is trying to solve is that a lot of guys feel lonely, sad, and isolated, and we believe that this is caused by them not being included in their community due to alienation, the alienation of the modern world. The ways that we interact with our community around us have fallen by the wayside, and people aren't members of stuff anymore. So you're all community minded because you're in this space already. So we've actually probably got a higher percentage of people who are included in stuff, but your average guy is not a member of anything anymore. Now, once we had all these things that we could join, run, and be included in, there wasn't work or home. Join, run, and included in, because say third spaces are great, but they're only as good as what you do with them. So all of those three are important: the join, run, and be included in. But I want to talk about the run aspect. For everyone, if you want to hear about the other aspects of Tough Guy Book Club, I've been talking about it for a decade. Please go and just look up one of the other hundreds of talks or just email me. But we'll talk about the running aspect today. The running aspect is that volunteering and helping a stranger are two of the key measures of the UN's World Happiness Index. So volunteering and helping a stranger. Our organization is run by 180 volunteers. Also, today I'm talking about these in these ways because I'm not trying to pitch this at you. I'm trying to talk about some of the interesting concepts about Tough Guy Book Club. If you want a sales pitch, Call me later and I'll convince you. But what we really want to talk about is that, so the happiness, the happiness index there with volunteering and helping a stranger. Our organisation is run by 180 volunteers around Australia, myself included. I'm one of the volunteers. And if you've been involved with a men's organisation before, you know that it's not hard to get men to want to help once they see the value in something. The example we use a lot of this is that once you have a barbecue, there's like 12 guys standing around trying to tell you how to burn the sausages. And what that is when guys, there's a drive within men that are socialized to have it, but to help and to be included. Even if they don't know each other, they'll walk into that barbecue and they'll go, oh, I can stand here and I can probably just tell this guy that he's not turning them enough. There is a natural incline, well, a socialized incline to be helpful and to be involved in things that we see as important. So when men are involved with Tough Guy Book Club, they get to help strangers through their participation, which is one of those key happiness indicators, and they get to volunteer. And men being able to help one another through the running of their local chapters gives them a sense of ownership and a sense of generosity. So within a system of both giving and receiving in a Tough Guy Book Club chapter, there is like an inclusion by being involved. We're ticking off two of the key happiness variables on the subjective well-being scale. Those are generosity and social support. So the giving and taking of running a community organization, the doing the thing yourself means that you are showing generosity, and being able to get social support from a men's health organization like Tough Guy Book Club means that you are getting social support. So that means that we're of the 6 things that the UN would we currently believe can make you happy in the world, you are getting 2 of the 6 of them. And we should focus on those things. So we run towards those 2 indicators. The other ones are corruption and freedom and this other stuff, and I can't really help with those. Our book club can't help with corruption and ability to vote or money. So where does all this community development come from? Where does all this movement and thinking about what community and what giving and taking gets us? I'll quickly go over some slides. I'm not really a slide person, but we'll do the thing. Okay, my big old logo. And let's see if I can turn it. Yes, we can. Okay, so what we got here is these are some numbers for Tough Guy Book Club for you all professionals who work in this industry. So let's just talk about some numbers here for a second. Over half of the guys who come along to TGBC have been coming for more than 2 years. 54% interact with TGBC on a weekly basis. Now, we're a monthly club. We're a monthly book club, but 50% of our people interact with us more than one, like on a weekly basis. So once a week, so 4 times a month. And 50% are in touch with other members informally 2 or 3 times a month. So every sort of 8 days, 9 days, someone in this club is talking to someone else within this club. Now, benefits after joining TGBC, the rates of annual GP checks went up quite a lot. 50% say they have more friends. That's an important number. I want to build on that one. Feeling more connected and less socially isolated, 67%. That is a big indicator for us for positive change. And this is because we are thinking of ourselves not as a set and forget organization. If you Google me, you'll probably hear me complain about the speech guys. A lot of our history within the men's health space has been about turning up and making a speech and then leaving. We have a saying for TGBC, which is you go, we stay. And we don't just stay, because this is we're not providing a service here. What we're doing is we're giving a toolkit to leaders within their community to run their own chapter. And this is self-perpetuating by themselves. So 33% are happier. I wish that was a bit higher, to be honest. These are the numbers from our annual census. I feel have better support network when things go bad. 50% of our people think that they have a better support network when things go bad. Things go bad is quite a vague term, but we all know what that means. We just had conversations about suicide this morning. I've learned from TBC that have helped me cope with my own life. This is them interacting with each other. And then a better understanding of people, 34%, which is great. One of the things about reading is thinking of each other more complexly, gives people better frameworks in which to experience the world. And then benefits increase. Those numbers actually increase over time. So we've got all that graphed. So these numbers go up the longer you've been with us. And then social increase in social connection in a group. Veterans who are Who joined TBC? 60% of veterans feel more connected and more socially isolated. Veterans is a reasonably big number for us. It's higher in us, like in our club, than it is within the general populace. And then 28% of men joined because of loneliness, and 80% of those reported feeling more connected and less socially isolated because of what we do. So there's a lot of numbers. I'm not much on numbers, so I'm going to do something really weird. I'm going to show you some pictures. I'm going to talk about some pictures. So most embarrassingly, I did, because I didn't know this was going to be recorded. Here's my photos of me. Now, these are my social media like profile pictures. Me doing things, looking interesting, doing stuff. Now, when we look back, I think when we look back, we can work out ways to improve our current life, but we usually do it really badly and bugger up and take the wrong lessons. But when we look at photos, but I realized something about photos when we first started TGBC, and I think if we stare at it, we can learn something about it. We've thought a lot about photos over the years. So let's look at some old photos. The art a community shares and makes tells you a lot about a community. So here are my profile photos from social media. Interesting, doing stuff. Next, let's look at some old photos. Photos were expensive, so you didn't get to take a lot of them all the time. So if you look at old photos, there's a bunch of men standing in front of stuff that they are proud of as a group of people. Maybe it's something they started, maybe a celebration or something, maybe it's an anniversary. They get together and they think of themselves, the art they produce, they think of themselves as a community. Now, my photos a second ago were just of me. These are the photos that these men had in their lives. So together as a community, they took photos of groups of men in front of stuff. So much of this is about what Tough Guy Book Club looks like. Of course, we've got a skull as a logo, but this is about groups of men standing in front of something and being a group of people together. These people are members of stuff. They are in a community that does a thing that's not just work. Maybe those guys are work guys, to be honest, or it could be one of those sort of more formal clubs. But what they're doing is they're thinking of themselves and showing themselves as a group of people in all of their photos. So when they see themselves reflected back by their art, by the photos that they use in their life, it's not just photos of me hiking up a hill, it's photos of these men. And so we continue that through the tradition of Tough Guy Book Club. Groups of guys together doing stuff that they can show that they are proud of, that they are celebrating, that they are a member of a community. That one looks like a drill band, but anyway, I think that gets the message across. Now, finally, essentially my thing here, there was a lot of complexity to the things I was saying. I usually would just turn up and say drinking beer is great and we should hang out in pubs more, it's good for you. I'm going to leave that to Daniel, and I'll back him up with a bunch of yeah, he's right in a second. But I wanted today to talk about something that's slightly more complex about how the nature of men structure within society can implement, in fact, both their happiness and their mental health. Because all of those numbers, people come to us. We're not the most accessible organization. Everyone can come and it's free. But we've got book club on the logo, and so that's a small snapshot of men within Australia, and there's lots of us, but it's still a it's a demographic, and half of them are saying they are lonely. And that's the stories I hear every single time we do introductions at Tough Guy Book Club. They'll say, I've just retired and I have no friends. I've just had a big breakup, and he or she kept them. He kept my friends. I've just moved to town and I don't know how to know people. These are the things that I hear every day. So essentially the time for awareness raising is over. Join something. If you're a healthcare provider, convince them to join stuff. Make some stuff for them to join. And on that, are we going straight to Daniel? Because I'd just like to introduce him if I could. And on that, make something you can join. Daniel from Barstool Bros, just here.
I don't want to break your rhythm because it was beautiful. So maybe we'll come back to you to reintroduce Daniel. But
Okay, yeah.
you've managed to control your time well enough that we can actually do some.
I have a big stopwatch right in front of me.
Ah.
It's literally a whole screen.
Yeah. So the last time that Shay and I spoke was when I met him in person for the first time in Victoria, and he took me to all the pubs in Melbourne, and that's quite a lot of them. So yeah, we spoke for about 8 hours into the early hours of the morning. So hearing him, and he still hadn't said everything he had to say. So that's
opinionated.
Really interesting. You know, on a personal note, and I'll happily come to people in the room as well in a moment. In a personal note, just really made me reflect on my dad, actually, less than my granddad. I haven't really got a sense of my granddad's world, more of my dad's world. But my dad's 91, so you know we're going back to the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. But even remembering him when he grew up, and he is the most antisocial man that I know. You know, he'll literally sit in a room of people if people are getting together to eat and turn his back on the room just so he can focus on his plate of food. And he's ended up in the final days of his life in a care home where he stays in his room. He's got a door to the outside, and the food comes in one door from the care home, and he goes out the other door go for a walk on his own every day. And he now has no social connection. He's not joined anything, running anything, or included in anything. But that wasn't always the way. Even as a very antisocial man, he had work. He had the football club. He had the church. He was a beekeeper, and he had the Beekeepers Association. He did wood turning, and he had the wood turning group. And he was in the Parents Teachers Association of the local school. He had all these different things, and he couldn't really go anywhere in our community without seeing people that he knew, even though he is an absolute classic stoic.
That's exactly it. And there's just a ratio. I've got numbers on if anyone wants to see. I just don't like throwing up numbers and talking about them all day. But the ratio of people, the amount of things that people were actually involved in their community in the 30s, 40s, 50s is remarkable compared to now, which is almost zero. You know, if you're sporting, then you played sport until you're about 30, and then you left your team, and that's it. That's us. Like the end.
Yeah. And then the other piece, because you use the little church as a metaphor, and again, I could really relate to that because I grew up in a community where the church was the heart of the community, and not in a religious sense. Obviously, there were church services, but it was Church of England, so we tried not to talk about God too much. We weren't like the Catholics, you know.
Well, you know, and Glenn, you and I have talked about this one before. Is that in a smaller community, you can have one central focus. You can have one central focus of community, but they don't last the test of time most of the time. You know, like the football club analogy is that what happens if that thing changes? You don't, you know, everyone who's worked in any sort of resistance training, like resilience training before, is going to know like the idea of a table. The more legs on it, the more stable it is. But you know, people need to have connections to their community like that. It should look like a dense lattice work. So if one thing happens, the church burns down or closes or something, or your football team goes terrible, or they just haven't won in 20 years, so you pretend you don't like them anymore, then you're still interconnected with the people around you and the community around you. You know, if you're just a father, then when your kids leave home, you're no longer really that as much. When you're just a husband, if your wife leaves you, you are no longer that. If you're just a person with a job, when you retire or you lose your job, you are no longer that. So many things can be taken away from you. So the amount of connection we can get people to have within their community, and also gives them the benefit of those things, like the generosity and the giving and the helping of strangers, those things, those key indicators for happiness from the UN, we can give those by going, you should go and help those people, they need you. Because to quote Billy Bragg, you know, most of the people in this room, myself included, we're never going to be young or cool anymore, but we can definitely help other people.
What was the Billy Bragg quote in that?
No, it's that we're never going to be young. We're never going to be young, attractive, or cool anymore. But we can definitely help other people because we've learned many things throughout a lifetime. We're the guys that can help people. So we need to go and do that. And so a purpose can be helping others. And so we can jam them into, someone comes to you and says, oh, I feel isolated. Like, I'm going to make you go and join a bunch of things. You're going to be too busy to worry about how isolated you are. All these people keep talking to you all the time.
Brilliant. And to quote Billy Bragg, sexuality, warm and wet and wild and free. Completely not relevant, but it's the only Billy Bragg quote I can think of right in the moment. So the other piece that you've got me really thinking on, Shay, is that in our highly individualized society, whenever we look at social problems, the tendency is to then look at the individual and work out what is it that's actually not working in the individual that they need to fix in order to resolve the problem that's created by the change in society. And we seem to be really keen to do that with men in particular as well. And so, men are socially connected. Well, it's because men are no good at opening up, or men don't share their feelings, or men are no good at making friends. So therefore, we need to change men in order to fix this problem.
That's exactly it. We'll change the individual about how they communicate. We'll teach them how to communicate better. Bollocks to it. Collectivize the issue and know that they are a member of a community. And even if they're the most antisocial person, like your old man, even if they're most antisocial, if you put them in enough locations, they won't have time to be antisocial because there'll be so many people talking to them. And that's with shared interests and helping others and all of these things that when your third space is, when they close down your pub because they made it into apartments and your third space becomes Netflix, then you don't have that, And again, I think our whole thing is about book clubs in person. And because I think the last 20 years of being online and thinking about yourself and taking photos of your face and calling each other names has not really helped us as men. So, getting back into the pub, having some decent disagreements with people, talking about I don't want to talk about who won the football. I want to talk about the nature of revenge. Join Tough Guy Book Club.
Okay, so I'll give you a chance to reintroduce Daniel in a moment, but just one last small question to finish this segment. If the solution is not changing the individual, what type of things can government and others do, or is it government? Is it communities? What type of things can people do more generally, other than start up and join a Tough Guy Book Club? What type of thing? What are the sort of like 3 or 4 big asks we could include in a big, policy document that said this is how we create social connection in men at a collective level?
Yeah, I leave the policy documents for you guys, but for the kind of the way we go further towards what we're talking about is, if you're a healthcare provider that talks to men directly, making joining stuff a real lighthouse of your care, you'll see those benefits. You'll see them reflect back those benefits, I think, rather quickly. Things we want to see change is funding for local community organizations, funding and support is most important, but funding and support for local community organizations, because if you walk into, let's say, the Lions Club, I don't have anything to do with them, I just pick them out a name out of a hat, but if you walk into one of those tomorrow, I reckon everyone will be over the age of 70. And same with most of these places we're talking about, all that big list of things. If you walk in there, everyone is a retiree. When is the area in our lives where we have time to do this? And so without support for people to being able to do this, then it's only retirees. And then we've got no intergenerational conversations. These spaces are one of those intergenerational conversation spaces. When was the last time you had a conversation with a person who of a different generation without there being a hierarchy, a boss or a parent, or those spaces for intergenerational conversation are super important. And then lastly is protect our third spaces. I somewhat humorously, somewhat seriously, have for about 10 years been saying nationalize all the pubs. And that's because we do need these third spaces. It can't just be the library and the park. We do need places where people gather to eat and drink and socialize. It can't just be quiet libraries and bright parks. It does need to be interesting third spaces. So open a community center in your town. Get onto them about it. Pubs are a perfect one, but they should be everywhere, on every single street corner. The house, like your front room made public, the public house. But but we can make other ones as well. In some communities I've worked around, They don't have a lot of don't have pubs because of drinking either restrictions or religious restrictions around drinking. So that's not going to be a great third space for them. But that third space needs to be built, and they need to be looked after and maintained, and not just by a bunch of old guys. We need to find a way to introduce young people into those spaces.
Great. And if you'd like to hand over the reins.
Oh, yes.
Style.
So one of those things you can do is you can go and hang out with the Barstools Bros. Then Daniel Chin is going to talk to you about their great organization, and I really like them. So here he is.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks, Glenn. I guess Shay covered a heap about why we are doing what we do in regards to male connection in particular. I'll give a brief history over Barstool Brothers, how we started. So we began out of a local burger bar in Wollongong called His Boy Elroy. And myself and the owner, Lachlan, he's a veteran of 2 tours of Afghanistan. And basically he was searching for purpose after his service, and bounced around a couple of jobs in management, and thought it was time to start something for himself and basically make money for himself. And one of Lockie's ideologies is really firmly around community. And we noticed that after working just behind the bar, him and I, we noticed more and more men come and sitting at the bar to talk to us. And what we kind of found from that really quickly is it's all this talk around men are afraid to talk and open up. We kind of haven't really found that to be true. It's if they have the right space, they feel comfortable, they're more than willing to talk. And so what we thought is if we open up the doors just to all men and remove as many barriers as possible, primarily financial barriers, that we'd be able to start creating community within our community. And so we offered everyone to come down for a free burger and fries, any man or woman at that stage to come down, and the opportunity was there to receive that burger, fries and a beer for free, or pay $20 and then get a card where you could pay it on. And I know that's something Shay touched on in regards to generosity. We found that if you give people a choice of doing something selfless or selfish, they will choose selfless a lot of the time. And so we had about 95% of people buy the $20 package and receive the card to pay it on to someone who might be struggling or might be a bit less fortunate. So that was really successful early. And we ran 2 of those catch-ups once a month. And unfortunately, after the second one, the first bout of COVID hit. So we had about 75 people show up to our second catch-up. And then we primarily had to go online for quite some time. As being a small business restaurant, we weren't allowed to have anyone in. So we were still able to have people at some point in smaller groups, and we were able to get 10s and 25s, and it was an hour at a time, and we tried to manage it as best we could. And then we noticed a huge change once the second lockdown came. We found a lot more men kind of outwardly being more desperate for connection, and our online group on Facebook grew to around about 1,500 members, mostly men from Wollongong. And we just found people starting to actually use that as public cries for help, which I think if you show that if you can see men reaching out for help publicly to a group of blokes they don't know, it's quite serious. And between myself and Lachlan, we received a fair few calls of crisis within the 1 month period we had to act on. I thought there needs to be something more that we have to do to create these spaces around Australia. And there we kind of broken up into a community sector and an educational sector of what we do here. So our community sector is about bringing those guys together. Currently, we run 5 to 6 events per month. All of them are free to our members. They include a range of activities from sporting activities such as golf. We've done some Muay Thai boxing exercise classes. We will play wheelchair basketball every couple of months. We've also got some mindfulness and some creative stuff with yoga, pottery, painting, these types of things, and try and make have as much variety as possible to try and tip some guys off to one thing or another. If they're not into physical activity, well, let's have something there where it's nice and easy for them to come along to. And as I said, take away those financial barriers. I think in this point in time, more than ever, it's really important to bring people together. So our 2 main monthly events are, creatively named a monthly catch up and then our monthly brunch. So we have the second Tuesday of every month, which is tomorrow night. We'll host around about probably 70 to 80 people will come down. And at the moment, it's quite simple. Come down, everyone that takes a seat gets a free burger and fries. We introduce or welcome them at the door, generally pretty good at spotting any new members or people that are walking past, kind of a bit dicey on if they should come in or not. So we'll be there to greet them. We've got a board of directors, which is 9 people strong, and we have a welfare and events committee, which is 9 people strong. So we have a commitment of around about 6 of our kind of official parties there at all times as well. So we welcome these men in, get a quick gauge through conversation of what they're there for. And I think what we found is so many of our guys, it's a real split between people who are after support, who are there to give support and lend a hand. And also a lot of guys that we are finding, as Shay touched on, it's just loneliness. It's going through a major life event, whether it be divorce, moving, losing the kids, change of job, whatever it is, and people coming in and just having absolutely no points of connection. And so that's where we find a lot of our member group coming from, is in that 40 to 55-year-old age group. As I said, it used to be like, if you don't play sports at that age, it is really hard to make friends. It is really hard to be a part of anything. As I said, community, as Shay touched on, it is a bit of a dying thing. And I was at a Rotary Club meeting, and there was definitely no one under 80 there when I spoke to them. So it is unfortunately a bit of a dying thing, along with the RSLs in bringing young people together. So what we try and do is create a range of events every single month that people can come in, and the goal is to create a central event like the monthly catch up with it's accessible to anyone to come down, have a free burger and fries, and it's easy to sit there. We think men can, over food, it's very easy to have a conversation. It's not as confrontational when you're not paying maybe full attention or looking the person directly in the eye. You can sit there, have a burger and have a casual conversation. And that's what these catch-ups have really been. We haven't implemented any speakers. We don't call it a mental health night. I think if we called it a mental health catch-up, we'd probably get 5 to 10 people as opposed to the 70 or 80 we get. And I think that speaks to men. Everyone that comes in is very well aware of our underlying mission and what we're all about. We are about creating healthy conversation. We are about creating connection. And at these bigger events, the idea is to get these new men to come in and meet the current members, and then we solidify those relationships through these other events, like going for a walk or cooking barbecues, helping out other charities and things like this. So that's really our community aspect, and we really hope to keep building those connections. And I think the one thing we've seen is the people who come in looking for support, we're able to provide that. We have a counsellor on our event and welfare committee who's at the majority of events. We have psychologists on our board as well who we can fast track into appointments if people are at that level of need of support. But as I said, most of the guys are just there to make friends, to be a part of something. Some are there just to find people to play golf with, but what they don't realize is they are searching for connection. We wanted to be able to replicate this, and this is where our educational part come in that we're working on now. And it can be quite difficult replicating this in hospitality venues when alcohol is present. There are a lot of venues out there that would see a group of 50 guys and kind of rub their hands together and think, oh, this is going to be good. Like, let's get the boys a couple of beers, into the pokies, into the tab. And we see that as quite dangerous. At His Boy Ellery, we sell 80% of our non-alcoholic beer on our monthly catch-up night. This isn't something that we've enforced. It's just people are really aware of why they are there, and people come in and have a couple of beers by all means and be social. But our underlying goal with the training and everything we're doing in the community is to really take away the focus being alcohol in these venues. The church analogy was really good. I think hospitality venues and pubs, to put it more blatantly, are really kind of those new modern churches where people feel comfortable going to build that connection with people. But what we want to do is make the connection the focus and not the alcohol. So it's fine to go and have a beer, but it's really about going in and having conversations, building connection with your mates or meeting new people there. And it's not about going and getting on the beers per se. So that's something that we're quite working hard on with our educational project, which we're about to launch next month. And our aim there is to train all hospitality venues in New South Wales to start in a baseline communication and awareness course. And a lot of what we are trying to do, we started out with this course actually with the benefit of the patrons in mind. And we think if the staff were trained in how to communicate, pick up signs and symptoms of poor mental health, that was really important. And I think another thing that Shay touched on before is that intergenerational conversations. I think the people coming out of school these days are so bound to technology and typing, and even coming out of COVID with a real lack of just socializing. There is a disconnect between, you know, a young 18 to 20-year-old person in hospitality trying to connect with a 60-year-old person on the other side of the bar. It can be a bit tough. So it's something that we want to lift the baseline of mental health education within the hospitality industry. And we conducted our first pilot study, trained around about 400 people in Wollongong in this course. And we took surveys before and after and found that 80% of the people surveyed out of about 380 reported below average mental health. And that was really quite alarming. I've worked within hospitality in and around it for about 20 years. And to see those numbers so high was quite alarming. So this education kind of switched as opposed to the patrons being the main benefactor, it is definitely the employees and the businesses themselves. And I think if we can get that baseline education up within those employees, it starts to reflect upon the customers, make those venues safer and more comfortable for people to come, and then build those connections in a healthier environment. So that's what we're working on. It's called the Barstool Project, and we'll be launching that in the next couple of months. At the moment, it is all completely funded through our burger restaurant. We collect tips off our QR code ordering system, and all tips, it says that all tips are donated to the Barstool Brothers to keep our community events for free. We use a system called Mr. Yum. They have about 5,000 restaurants in Australia, and our little 60-person restaurant is the biggest earner of tips out of everyone there. And I think you give people the option of doing something good and giving to the community, they will take that option. So we're quite lucky that the community down in Wollongong has supported us, and we're having more and more companies now reach out and offering kind of financial help to keep all our events free, which is quite nice as well. So, I don't have really any fancy slides or anything. We like to keep things quite simple where we are, especially from a community point of view. We think that's important. I think if you start complicating things for men, it just becomes a bit too much and they'll kind of turn away from it. And a lot of the time they'll only give something one chance as well. So we like to just think of it as a good way to meet people. And as I said, the connection is just vital for a lot of these men. So I think that's pretty much the wrap up of what we're doing. But I'm very happy to answer kind of any questions about what we're going for sure. And Shay, I definitely want to have a chat. I know you've got a book club up in Ostermere, so I think it'd be great to talk to the guys up there. And I'm sure, as I said, there's people in our group that would much prefer to do that than go and do a boxing fitness class or something, I tell you.
And the funniest thing is, we've been doing this a decade now. We're all bartenders.
Yeah.
That's why it's on a Wednesday night.
Yeah. Well, and that being in hospitality allows us, we know that all of our training will mainly happen Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday mornings, and working around the hospitality industry in particular.
Right. Thank you both. I'd love to hear from any of the guys in the room. Any reflections on the conversation you've heard today, or actually anything from all of today? Because I know some of you have been in since 10 a.m. So you've been in for the long haul. John, Pete, John or Ross? Oh, I know Grant's in the background checking in some comments as well.
I've got a question.
Thanks, John. Yeah.
It's the Tough Guys Book Club. What books are they reading at the moment in some of the places?
Well, all chapters read the same book and meet on the same night, 7 o'clock on the first Wednesday of the month in your local pub. Currently, this month we are reading, I'm furiously Googling. It is called, you can check out our website also at all times what we're reading. It's called Interpreter of Maladies. Came out in 1991, won the Pulitzer, won the Hemingway Award, which is quite a good one for us. Last month was Scoop by Evelyn Waugh. And we did some Franz Kafka earlier in the year, and some S.E. Hinton. So we move around. We only do fiction because I think you can tell, if you want to know about dates and times, you can read non-fiction. But if you want to know about people, you need to read fiction. So we read literature. So that's what we're reading at the moment. You should come down, John.
Great.
Also, our 80 locations are on our website as well. If you want to refer people to it or check us out sometime, we're about 1,600 people attending monthly at the moment. So we're pretty easy to find around the place. If you're in the top 30 population centres in Australia, we're pretty easy to find.
Yeah. Look, this is a really obvious question, but I think it's one that will come up whenever these ideas are raised. I think particularly for Barstool Brothers, it does position itself much more towards traditional, the edges of the traditional mental health support piece. How do we square? I think you know what the question is going to be. How do we square the demon drink and the terrible things it does to men's health with actually recognizing that both the positive aspects of drink and drinking venues, and just the very fact that you're more likely to find blokes in the pub than you are in a GP surgery. How do we square those two things? Yeah, either of you or both of you.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think the important one. So there's an old community organising saying, which is go to where they are. And that, like, I mean, if you wanna find men who need to read more, talk more, and have more friends, you go to a pub. You know, because you can't go to their house. I don't know where they live. So
that would be weird too.
Yeah, that would be weird. Oh, hey, you're now a member of the club. No, but the other one as well is that when people talk about drinking in a mental health capacity, they talk about excessive drinking, and we need to realize there's a difference between these two things. Every other industry in Australia realizes there's a difference between these two things, but when we talk about mental health, we immediately think of the most negative connotation we can. And that's not what drinking looks like. You know, this is a country that likes to drink. And the vast majority of it is moderation. To be honest, I think one of the reasons why people think of book clubs and drinking is mostly because your mum got hammered on fruit Alexia the last time she went to a book club. But we've really got to think about what drinking looks like. And we need to be involved in participating in that conversation. Because if you leave it just to the naysayers, or if you leave it to you know, without participating in that conversation, we can't have real conversations about what healthy community drinking looks like, because we do need to have a conversation about that with some people, and we need to participate in that space. And if we don't, then we just leave it to, well, whoever else wants to impact it, someone who wants to sell you something, or someone who wants to tell you it's the worst thing ever. And neither of those things are great.
Yeah. And well, about 4 points there. Firstly, Pete loved your joke about your mum. That went down really well there. Yeah, in men's health, we talk about going where men are, which is just another version of the community saying. And clearly, go down to any tavern, men are definitely there.
That's where we were when we started this thing for us. We started this organization for us, for people who were me and my friends, and that's where we were. So we just do that. John, you look at you putting your hand up there.
Yeah, Shay, I just want to ask, when you have men come to the group, your sessions, if you've got someone that has a drinking problem, how do you handle that on the night?
Well, that's the thing. So one of the things about we're not Barstool Bros. We're not going to go out and fix people's problems. We don't claim to. We're a community organization that's about inclusion and inclusivity. But if someone turns up with not drinking problem, it depends on where they are with their drinking, you know, because my conversation with alcohol is a lifelong conversation, as much as a lot of people's are. If they are a person who has a drinking problem and they currently have it under control and they are not drinking, good. We do nothing with that. We're in pubs, but pubs have got lots of cool things in them, you know. It's more about the great third spaces and the comfortableness of a great pub, you know. The carpet smells funny, and I love that, and beer looks good. But if they are a person who is currently participating in a drinking problem, being part of a community of people who gives a shit about you is going to say something. You know, our guys aren't shy. It's one of the things that you'll notice about our club very quickly is they are not shy to say, "Oi, pull your fucking head in," because that's the way we communicate as a club. So if someone's experiencing that, we're about putting people onto healthcare providers. Right. You need to address this issue that you are going through. We are worried about you. You don't seem like you're having a good time. Here's how you get a hold of healthcare providers. We work quite heavily with healthcare providers in our area for different things like substance abuse. So you need to talk to someone, handball that off to the professionals.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Pete had a question or a comment. Go ahead, Pete.
came here basically today thinking I might get some help with people who need help around me, but I'm super impressed by the burger and chips and beer being there. If the invitation came to me to go along to drink beer, I wouldn't go. I'm not a non-drinker, but it just, the connotations is different. But the hook of the free beer and chips somehow breaks it open where it sounds like you're going to something special, basically. And I think that's fantastic. And some of the advice there in how the group is managed about making it a belonging thing instead of just an anonymous thing. That's, I have a little music group that I set up to get people out of the house, and I want to change the focus on that now because I want people to belong. I was never game to present that as something you belong to, but looking at this with the fact that people don't belong to anything anymore, that looks like exactly what I should be doing now. So it's fantastic value.
And Peter, there's a great narrative by one of the great community organisers, Marshall Gans, Professor Marshall Gans, about not providing services, but empowering leaders within communities to organise as a community, and that's the real difference. We can go and we can turn the tap of money and services on this situation all day, but until people have some ownership in that situation, we won't be solving these problems. We'll just be bandaging up problems all day,
Fantastic.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Shay. Yeah, Ross?
Yes, Shay, the model that you're talking about, could we reimagine it for those who are in their early 20s?
Our next big project is actually a high school. We're rolling out high school trials currently. We've got a couple of different things. One of the things that we know from being around for 10 years is that guys who are part of a community that they can be a part of as their life changes is vitally important.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're getting at there, Ross. So what we're actually aiming at, the next big wing of our thing is TGBC, like Tough Guy Book Club Youngbloods, which is in high schools. So when people are leaving into their adult life, they'll actually be bringing this through with them. And so what they will do is help us in a couple of ways as well. It introduces some younger guys into our older guy situation. And we'll do that by, I was miserable at school. I hated it. I got tossed out of a bunch of them. And the one thing that I liked was reading. And I know that we set this up with us and me and my friends in mind, and we found a lot of people like us. And I think we'll do the same when we hit high schools.
As an ex-principal, I think that's great. And now, as a father of 3 sons who are in their early 20s, I'm very conscious of the pressure that they are on in their communities about drinking heavily, about doing outrageous things all the time, and having the opportunity to go to a place where conversations about those things could be something that's happening would be additional to what their lives are like now. And so that addition would be very useful.
Yeah, Ross, my entire community organising life, my whole life, is based upon this old postcard. And it's got a person standing in the middle and a bad guy on one side and a good guy on the other. And it just underneath it says someone's talking to them. And we need to put ourselves in these spaces so someone is talking to those young people, because someone will be talking to them. And there's villains out there.
Daniel, can I come to you? We started this section just talking about balancing between, the demon drink and spaces for drink being a place to connect around health messages. How do you respond to that challenge or that concern or that reticence that sometimes exists?
Yeah, it's hard. It's one of those things you can't single out, and if people don't let you know initially when they're coming to a group for the first time, it's not something you can pick up on. So you really rely on the community that's there to kind of pull them in. It's a real kind of communal effort to not keep an eye on everyone, but just be aware of the people around you who might be struggling, and if they have some kind of an issue with alcohol, to keep an eye on that. And I think the one thing we did just subtly from the start is that a few of us that attend our monthly catch up, myself, our co-founder, a couple other guys in the board, we were kind of happy to walk around with either a non-alcoholic beer and keep the can so people were aware that we were doing that, or, you know, it might be a Coke or something like that too. So just let other people know that it's perfectly fine to not have to get on the beers here, especially if it's something that is an issue for you outside of that kind of one space. So I think it can be a lot just by showing that it's not all about getting on the beers. I understand it's just hard when people come in with an issue that is not visible. Fortunately, it's something that we've been running these catch-ups for over 4 years, and we've had one person start to get a bit carried away, and it was a couple of the older guys in the group just people that have been around the group a bit longer were kind of like, hey, is everything okay? And pulled him aside and ended up having a chat to him about it, and he went and got help. So as I said, I think it really comes down to that community part, being aware that, you know, it can be quite an issue around, especially when you're in a space and that is mental health focused without really pushing it. The guys are really aware that we're there not to, you know, get drunk basically. So we've had people offer to put, you know, money over the bar and these types of things on those nights. And it's been other members of our little community kind of say, well, why don't you make a donation to host an event or something, as opposed to putting that money on the bar. So it is a bit of a general awareness from the guys that are coming that isn't the focal point of why we're there. The focal point is the connection. But as I said, we're kind of lucky with some of the trained professionals that we do have hanging around, that if we think there's anyone sort of on the edge, we can guide them that way. And I think it's something we learned early on. It's certainly not our job, nor are we equipped to fix everyone, but everyone is able to support or at least guide them to somewhere else. So whether it's just having a conversation and then guiding them to the right places, it's something that all our committee and board are very aware of, and that's why they're quite active in our groups. So there is that kind of shining light in a way of someone who always knows where to guide people that may need that extra help.
Right, and that training of the hospitality sector, so taking some of those learnings more broadly, is that an existing off-the-shelf training, or is it something you've developed yourselves?
It's something we've developed ourselves. One of the psychologists on our board has a company which develops educational programs. So we have tailored this a bit more specifically towards hospitality, and we're aware there's certain issues that can cause poor mental health in regards to the hours work, time missed with family and friends. You generally work weekends, nights. You can miss out on everything fun. I know I did for about 12 years, 15 years. It can be quite tough. Yeah. And we feel this in education is quite important, because hospitality is really that, you know, gateway to employment. So many Australians will go through hospitality as their first job while they're getting themselves through uni, while they're just finding their way. So that's why one of the reasons that we find this education is broadly more important as well, not just that mental health and making those venues safer, but it's those lessons that people can continue to, you know, take those skills on further past hospitality as well.
Great. Well, look, we've hit the hour. Very happy for you to, well, I should say, time, gentlemen, please. Have you got no homes to go to? Last orders, please, at the bar. Yeah. Cup of tea for me. But yeah, any last thoughts that anyone wants to share before we wrap up? This has been a fantastic conversation. Yeah, go.
Just on my end, if people, like always, Tough Guy Book Club is about questions and conversations, and you never think of the good question until you get home. Get in contact with me, everyone. I like this stuff. I want to talk about it. So get in contact with us. My email address is shay@toughguybookclub.com. Pretty easy to find. I'm definitely easy to find.
and I'm going to test how well read you are now. What's the French phrase for that, where you think of something afterwards and it's something to do with the stairs, like l'escalier? There's a French phrase.
That's for the educated sorts in here.
Come on, all those books, all those books you've read, Shay. Don't give me that nonsense. Bonus point for anyone who can come up with a French phrase for the question or the thought that you have after the event when you're on the stairs. Anyway,
I guess
try to raise the standard, but you know,
I think one thing that we found doing this too is how important it is for all these different groups to kind of work together where possible as well. And it just furthers those connections with people. And I said, the first thing I did when I heard of Tough Guy Book Club was look up where there was one near our area. And I think it's really important then to let our guys know about it, that there is another option out there, just in case something doesn't quite click with what we offer. Or maybe they're only getting 1 or 2 events a month out of us that they truly enjoy. This could be another one for them too. So I know we're partnering up with the Man Walk, who's obviously quite well known, and their CEOs from our area. We recently went and did the Kokoda Trek with Mark Burns from the Man Walk as well. And we're creating a mental health documentary out of that, which is a whole other thing. But taking a film crew through the Kokoda Trail is certainly an experience. So we feel working with these groups in particular and together is really important to show that there's kind of that solidarity in what we're all trying to achieve, as opposed to going our separate ways. So I think it's important to keep working with these groups together and giving these men that we're trying to look after as many connection points as possible. And
that's exactly it. There's just that dense lattice worker community. The more we can get them across things, the better.
Yeah, and then it's natural and people won't be anxious or worked up trying to come to these things. So the more that I think it's even visible in community that these groups are working together as opposed to apart is really beneficial, and it makes men more comfortable in going between the groups, not thinking that they have to align to one specific group, which can be, we've seen it happen around here, but we've also seen the benefit of Talk to Me Bro, for instance, running a morning day with their ice bars, and we have our monthly brunch after it. We'll get 20 or 30 of those guys come straight up from the ice baths to join us for a free bacon egg roll. So I think showing that these communities are working together is really important in what we're trying to achieve.
And to bring it full circle, essentially giving blokes in your community more things they can join, more things they can run, and more things they can be included in. Brilliant. All right, well, thank you both. It's been fantastic to have this yarn with you. I've learned heaps and really appreciate what you've contributed to. I'll leave you to go back to doing what you do best, which is running your fantastic organisations and balancing the rest of that with your lives. For those of you who are sticking around, we have a final session at 3:30. So we've got a 25-minute break now. At 3:30, we're shifting away from a focus on men to 2 national projects that are building social connection at a community level. There's the Neighbours Every Day campaign, which is building social connection in neighbourhoods run by Relationships Australia, and the 1000 Play Streets initiative, which works with local councils to close down quiet streets so kids and families can play in them for a period of time, thus building social connection. Obviously, men are involved in some of those. We're interested to hear about what we can learn from those projects and how we can adopt some of the learnings to help men become more socially connected in their community. And to say it one more time, to give men more things to join, run, and be included in. That's it. Over and out. Thank you all.
See you later.
Yeah.